Hey, everybody. Welcome to COVID 2021, 52 weeks to flatten the curve. I am your host, Rick Richards. Let's start the show. Yes, I am your faithful host, Rick Richards, and today is March 21st, 2021, 03/21/21. And it is exactly 1 year and 2 days since the very first COVID cast, which I did last year in the heat of the lockdown madness right after it had started. Started the COVID cast last year, did it for a while, and YouTube started smashing some of the shows, yanking them, pulling them. The views went way down from several thousand to a few of them. To start like 20, 30. And that's when I knew the jig was up. So I started uploading them on BitChute. And really, I didn't feel like there was a whole lot left to talk to, but I did want to do an anniversary show. I did want to do a 1 year later show just to kind of reflect on the whole situation and where we're at now and give people some updates so that they could, analyze the situation much in the same way that I would. So today's show is called 52 Weeks to Flatten the Curve. Remember that? Remember that initial 2 weeks to flatten the curve? It's funny, everybody remembers that because it was basically a meme at the time, right? It was, it was on everybody's lips. It was propagandized through almost every media source. But now, if you look at it, it's actually very hard to find an archived article that says 2 weeks to flatten the curve. They've all seemed to have been purged or disappeared. I mean, I'm sure some people have captured it somewhere, but it's really vanished. And, I do recall saying at the time, 2 weeks to flatten the curve. Well, what does that mean? It was all very vague, right? And as we know, the curve was flattened. The curve was smashed down. The curve is flat now. If anything, the curve's gone down, but a lot of those things have stayed in place, right? So anyways, that is the title of the show, 52 Weeks to Flatten the Curve. And let's get into it. The show, of course, is brought to you by Athletic Alliance, makers of the Advanced Nootropic, which I like to stack. I'm going to stack some right now, actually. I like to stack with Havoc Neuro. Havoc Neuro is a combination pre-workout nootropic product that really gets your mind zoned in, right? So that you have the mind of 12 or 13-year-old youth, sharp, right? Oh, stuff's tight. So let's do some shout outs. Quick shout outs. I will shout out our production assistant, Ivan. Fist bump me, bro. Come on, don't leave me hanging. There we go. Just to prove that I'm not alone here in the quarantine bunker. Ivan is in here helping me with stats, figures, audio levels too, right? If they're too loud, Ivan will pipe up and say something. Shout out to Long Duck Dong out there in Chilliwack, who's made an amazing turnaround. And we may be talking to him in the near future, so stay tuned. And shout out to everybody that, last year I got a lot of messages from people that really enjoyed the show. They enjoyed the comedy most of all. And people asking me different things of what I thought was going to happen. I'm no expert. I just apply basic common sense and strategic thinking. I mean, that's kind of my wheelhouse of what I do. And I basically apply that to the situation and try to extrapolate how things are going to play out. But that's not always possible. So let me take you back to last year, right? And the way this whole thing went down. I mean, I'll take it from my perspective personally first. So I was on a vacation in Cuba for my birthday, 50th birthday. I know what you're thinking. Rick Richards, you look like you're barely out of your 20s. How could you be 50? Well, I am. And last year I had my 50th birthday. So I was in Cuba, and then we started hearing reports of this virus that was making its way into Canada. Right when I was flying back at the end of January, I guess it was, we heard about this virus that had made its way to Canada, and the thinking on my part at the time was, okay, yeah, this is every couple of years there's some kind of virus that comes out, right? Either it's Ebola or it's swine, bird flu, avian flu, whatever, right? I mean, there seems to be one every 4 or 5 years, almost always from Asia. Hey, no racism, just an observation. If it comes from somewhere else, I'll say it. But come on, Asia. They do mostly come from Asia, right? But no hate. I love Asians. We love our Asians. Our Asians are the best Asians. We have lots of Asians in Vancouver, and they're great. Anyways, uh, yeah. So I mean, it had made its way into Canada, but this is when the psyop started. If you don't know what a psyop is, that stands for psychological operation, and basically, this is an intelligence tactic to start conditioning people to think a certain way. And what did we see last year? If you recall, last year, around February, we started seeing all this crazy stuff out of China, didn't we? We started seeing people welded into buildings, zombies passing out on the street, madness, windows being smashed, all this stuff that kind of would not be out of place in a horror or a thriller, right? A thriller on viruses or contagions. And there have been a few. And basically, the behavior, the videos that were being shared, the viral videos were basically very similar to the stuff that you would see in one of these movies, right? You can look them up. I can't remember the names of them, but there's several out there that, have an apocalyptic virus sweeping over the planet kind of thing, right? And so, I mean, people are already sort of conditioned to think that when shit really gets bad, that's how it's going to go down, right? There's going to be panic, people crashing cars, just this kind of really outlandish sort of behavior, right? Panic buying. And that's what we started seeing. We started seeing all of that in China, right? And still, I kind of took a sort of a nonchalant approach to it, right? And as February moved into March, phase 2 of the psychological operation, the PSYOP, started. All of a sudden, celebrities started getting this virus. Isn't that strange how there were so many celebrities that got it last year? I mean, our prime minister's wife got it. Tom Hanks got it, yada, yada, on and on, right? A whole bunch of them all got it around the same time. And this is around the time I thought, okay, well, maybe this virus is different, right? Maybe this virus is much more severe than what I had thought. Possibly, right? And then I remember quite clearly, March 13th. This was around the time, it was around it's my daughter's birthday. So it was kind of the last sort of normal thing we did before all this lockdown started kicking off. But it was around that time that the NBA, I think the NBA was the first one to announce that they were suspending the rest of their season. And once that happened, okay, then I started to get concerned. Then this was a real sort of shit became real, right? Because I mean, for the NBA to suspend or cancel a season, that's a lot of money, right? That is a very, very drastic step to take. And sure enough, all of this kind of stuff was really getting stoked up, right? You hear stories about freezer trucks being sent to New York because there's no place to bury all the bodies or to store all the dead bodies, right? You start seeing this crazy stuff coming out of Spain and Italy, and who even knows to this day if it was really as bad as all that, or if it was exaggerated, or if it just the virus just did particularly more damage in those communities than they would have otherwise done. Who knows, right? We still don't even really know, because I mean, there's been so much misinformation. And you know what? I'm not one of these people to come out right away and say, well, if the government says it, it must be wrong. Because when you're dealing with the government, I mean, you have a lot of different people working for an organization like that. There's going to be dissent, right? So, I mean, there are a lot of people. There are going to be, regardless of what their overall directive is, there are going to be a lot of people within the government that want to do the right thing and think that they're doing the right thing and want to keep on that track, right? So this is where we were last year. And within the space of, I don't know, 2 or 3 days, virtually the entire world was shut down, right? Our school for my kids just happened to be on spring break at the time, so that wasn't really an issue. The leagues, all the professional leagues were shutting down. Travel was grinding to a halt. I had a bunch of trips planned, a bunch of business trips in the US, and this flight was getting canceled, and then this flight was being changed, and then it was just one thing after another. So a whole series right around the middle of March last year, a whole series of dominoes started falling, and all our businesses that I was personally dealing with were kind of shut down. And so that's why I had a lot of kind of spare time to sort of evaluate the situation and think about what the fuck was going on. And that's why I started doing the COVID cast. But I mean, so that's where we were a year ago, right? So what have we learned since then, right? What have we learned since then? Well, I think whatever fear was stoked up, I think it's safe to say that just about all of us now can accept that it was unfounded, right? It was overblown and it was exaggerated. And that's fine. I mean, I shouldn't say it's fine, but I mean, I think in a situation like this, you always want to err on the side of caution, right? Generally, probably historically, outside of maybe war and famine, the most destructive, catastrophic events to take place would have been viruses, flus, pandemics, plagues, that sort of thing, right? So I think in that situation, it's always best to err on the side of caution. And so I was on board with that, but I think very quickly it started becoming obvious that whatever you thought or whatever we thought that this might be, it clearly wasn't that. I mean, fatalities under the age of 60 were extremely rare. Almost everybody that was dying had preconditions that jeopardized their health anyways. So whatever kind of shock to the system you get, if you're 80 years old and you have high blood pressure or you're diabetic, or you have a host of physical ailments and you get sick, anything is going to be damaging to you. Getting into a car accident when you're in that condition is much more likely to be fatal than if you're 25 and healthy, right? And that's what we were seeing. And things began to open up. I guess for my personal taste, they stayed closed a lot longer than they should have. But in my neck of the woods, British Columbia, things started to open up around the beginning of June, maybe middle of May, some stuff, I guess. Then by June, things were progressing into a more normal fashion, right? And then it was around this time that we saw the whole Black Lives Matter and the George Floyd mess kick off, right? And and that's when we saw, I think it was something like 1,300 doctors come out and say, well, COVID is bad, but racism is a greater threat than the virus is. So we endorse protests. And I'm like, okay, all right, this is a really strange left turn. So I guess the virus isn't that big of a deal after all, right? And it was pretty much forgotten. And, over the summer, it just began to become less and less of an issue. And then, of course, around September, things started ramping up again. Cases started appearing again. They started increasing, whatever. And I guess the rest of the story, everybody knows, right? It's just continued to escalate until we've gotten to where we are now. I think my neck of the woods, masks became mandatory around the beginning of December, end of November, I'd say. And, sooner in other parts of the country, sooner in other places in the world, or not at all in some places of the world. Ah, damn, that's good. Cherry Blaster. Havoc Neuro Cherry Blaster. So that was kind of the genesis of the situation, right? The genesis of the virus, where it was at, different approaches. And one thing that's really strange is that almost every country across the world took basically the same approach. I mean, there were a few exceptions. States in the US, there are some exceptions, which we'll take a look at, but it was remarkably uniform, the steps they took, right? So, I mean, that's something else that, might attract your attention, right? And it's funny, everything's a conspiracy, right? And then we come out, I mean, we find it's true, right? Like this great reset, everybody kept saying, oh, come on, man, cool it with the conspiracies, okay? And then our prime minister on a video, Justin Trudeau, starts talking about this is a great opportunity for a reset, a chance to set things straight, or whatever bullshit he did. But he was caught red-handed babbling on about this great reset. And there you go, another conspiracy confirmed, right? And that's one thing we always have to be mindful of, right? People may not necessarily want a situation, or they may not have necessarily engineered a situation. That doesn't mean they won't take advantage of it when it comes, right? I mean, if you're, let's say you operate a company that manufactures strong glass for windows, right? Burglar-proof glass, really strong glass for windows. Well, if there's an earthquake and a bunch of windows across the city are shattered, you're not responsible for the earthquake, are you? But you're damn sure going to take advantage of that. You're going to be out to all these homes. Your business is going to escalate. And, we've seen that. We've seen that with the government. They've really taken the opportunity to really extend their powers. And so have a lot of businesses, right? And before I get into a comparison of some situations and some of the things that are happening, I will give you one more anecdote. So about 2 weeks ago, I was right here in my office, my lockdown, quarantined, isolated office. Started feeling a little sick, started feeling nauseous, started getting a headache. And I'm like, oh man, I mean, I usually don't cut out of work, but on this particular day I did. And I went home, and man, that night I started getting chills. I started getting flu-like symptoms. I couldn't get warm no matter what I do. I kept shaking. Like I said, I felt nauseous. My whole body ached. And I was thinking, man, it's the COVID. COVID finally got me. It got me. It came into my house and it grabbed me. And now I'm a victim of the COVID. Me, who's been saying this whole time that everything is overblown. You've heard me saying that from the beginning, right, Ivan? Yes. Ivan's silently agreeing. I was saying that from the beginning, right? The whole COVID was overblown. I wouldn't go as far as saying it's just as flu. I mean, it's a contagious thing, but it's whatever. Anyway, so I thought, damn it, the COVID's finally got me. So, being the responsible guy I am, I started notifying people that I may have COVID, right? So I'm not going to be visiting or interacting or stuff like this, right? So I was isolating. And of course, people are saying, well, you should be wearing a mask then. Couldn't wait to stick it to me, right? So anyways, I said, well, I'm going to go get a COVID test. I will get a COVID test, man, because damn it, I am feeling awful. And if I got the COVID, well, I guess I should know about it, right? I should find out, and I should take appropriate measures, and I should be responsible. And where is it? So I went down, and the experience of getting a COVID test, well, it wasn't great, but it wasn't bad. I mean, so what happened is there's this drive-in. You go down to like a drive-in situation, right? And I got some video. Maybe I'll post the video. It's very brief, but anyways, I went down. It's kind of like a drive-in center. They have big tents. They have people kind of like in hazmat suits. And I requested the anal swab. Unfortunately, they weren't doing that there. I begged actually for it, offered to pay more, but no, the COVID test is free. And they don't even shove that thing up your nose. Actually, what I had was salt water, like a saline solution that you gurgle. You swish around, then you gargle for 5 seconds, and you do it again, then you do it again. You do it 3 times, and then you spit it into this tube. They seal up the tube, they take it away, and they go test it. And everybody at the COVID testing station was very nice. They were very friendly, very professional. They weren't dicks or assholes or any of that stuff. It wasn't a long wait. I just made an appointment. It was actually a very easy process. I had no issue with it at all. And oh, you can't see that. Can you see it? No, you can't. All right. Well, anyways, I got a message on my phone, and it says the BC Center of Disease Control COVID-19 test result from 03/05/2021 for Rick Richards, is negative. So I felt like I was on death's door, and I thought for sure I had the COVID, but the test came back negative. So there's a few things we can take away from this. Well, first of all, I'll tell you what it actually was that made me sick. I had gotten an eye infection about 3 days before that, and they gave me some really strong antibiotics. And the antibiotics I took caused this. I looked at the side effects, and sure enough, the side effects matched exactly what I had: flu-like symptoms, fever, chills, body aches, headache, nausea. I had all that stuff, man. These were all side effects from that stupid antibiotic medication that I took. So I stopped taking it. They went away within about 24 hours, all these symptoms. But there's a few things that we can take away. Number one, the COVID testing process is pretty honest, right? So, I mean, I can't speak for every place, but people saying that tests are coming back positive when they really aren't, that's not the case. Because in my case, like, honestly, I was certain that I did have it, but it came back negative. So the testing process is very honest. So I think we should give them credit for that. The testing process was very pain-free. Like, I mean, people that don't want to get tested, honestly, man, it wasn't that bad. It was quick. Everyone's friendly. It was over. You know, like I said, there was no issues at all with it. And the third thing, what did the most harm to me was something that was given to me by a doctor, right? And he actually had called me after he found out that I had gone for the COVID test. And we talked about the medication, and he didn't say anything about it at all. So I don't know. Take from that what you will. But yeah, so I mean, there's a few things we can take away from that. And, you know, I get this may put me into the anti-vaxxer camp, but if there's a virus and you have for all people that have gotten this virus, the survival rate is 90, I think it's 98.5 or 99%. If you have, and if you're younger, obviously it would be even higher. It'd be like 99.6 or something. So if you have that chance of survival, you really shouldn't fuck around with a vaccine, because the vaccine is liable to have a worse effect on you than getting the virus will. That's just a fact, right? I mean, them forcing it on people is really a big mistake, right? Anybody that feels the more you want to push something on people, the more resistant they're going to be to it, right? That seems fairly obvious to me. Anyway, so that was a near COVID experience for me. Obviously, I didn't have it. Obviously, I'm fine. And as I've been saying from the beginning, the concerns for this are a little bit overblown, right? But don't take my word for it. Don't take my word for it. Let's look at some different situations. So Texas, a couple of weeks ago, Texas, they actually, yeah, about 2 weeks ago, Texas removed all mask requirements. So up until a couple of weeks ago, I guess they had the same requirements for wearing masks indoors and all of the stuff that they had prior to that, and they removed it all. And it's been 2 weeks since then. And look at the cases. Cases are way down. They've been going way down, right? So, I mean, what does that tell you? No masks, cases going down. Maybe they'll start going up. I don't know. But then we look over at BC. You guys all see that? Hang on. BC, where I live, masks everywhere. Cases are kind of going up and then kind of going flat, right? So, I mean, how effective are the masks? I don't know. I really think it's kind of, I really think it's kind of getting pointless at this point. It doesn't seem to make a huge difference. If we look at places like Florida, where there's really no masks mandates in place, you know, people seem to be doing just fine, right? Let's be honest about it. I think a much bigger problem is just the lockdown measures, the disruption to people's lives. So, I mean, we all know what's happening to small businesses, right? Small businesses, especially retail dependent and area dependent businesses like gyms have just absolutely been smashed. Hotels, restaurants. I'm in a small business myself, but we have a more diverse a more diverse sales pipeline, so that we're not quite as dependent on retail traffic as some of these other places are. But I mean, gyms, like, I mean, the average clientele in a gym is probably what, I don't know, 25 years old. And so gyms, right, and healthy, right? Most of them will be healthy. Being healthy is one of the best ways to defend yourself against this virus. I mean, we've seen, I said earlier, and we've seen time and time again, the people that suffer the most, the people that are most likely to die or become seriously ill, or are people with underlying health conditions, quite often conditions associated with obesity, right? So is closing gyms a good idea? Closing gyms is a really bad idea. Um, and I mean, how many people in that age group have died anyways? Like next to nothing. So that's just gyms. But the same thing with sports, the same thing with high schools, like youth sports. The NFL is able to keep going. The UFC is able to keep going. The NBA and now the NHL. So all the professional leagues are able to keep going, right? But now all the amateur is basically shut down. And kids can't get those years back. Like if you are a senior in high school, or if you are going first year into college, this could probably end your aspirations and end your career, right? Because those are critical years that for you to be out of action for a year, it's one thing if you're younger, you can kind of adapt and you can kind of overcome. And different leagues are taking different approaches. Like you may be playing in a league, which is like, let's say in Texas, where they're just going to run everything as usual. Great for you. You could be one state over or one country over, and everything is absolutely shut down, right? So you're really at a disadvantage compared to people that are able to keep participating. Schools. How many kids? How many kids are stuck in apartments, right? Like if can you imagine if you are stuck in an apartment all day long? Your parents don't have enough money for you to have your own computer. How are you supposed to be, what's happening to your education, right? um, you have no activities that you can participate in anymore. You're not allowed to see your friends, and you can't adequately do your schoolwork. Like you're just existing. You're basically just almost like a product sitting on a shelf waiting to expire, right? It's just an absolutely horrible situation. I mean, it affects everybody. I mean, we shouldn't be looking for, who's affected worse by their economic situation, because it's bad for everybody. Let's just end it all, right? But I don't think people are taking into consideration these things. If we're going to shut down the entire economy and everybody's social life and everybody's physical existence in order to save people that are over the age of 85 that have pre-existing health conditions, but by doing so you're ruining the lives of somebody that's 25 or somebody that's 15, that's stupid. It's stupid and it's ignorant and it's selfish, right? You're making decisions as a whole that you really don't have a right to make. So that's something to think about. What else should we think about? Well, we know that there is being a lot of money paid out, right? There is a lot of money, and rightfully there should be. I mean, if you can't work and if your business is being shut down, you're not allowed, and if you're being prohibited from doing this stuff, then you should be compensated, right? But we have to ask ourselves, when does the bill come due? Because the bill is coming due. The bill is coming due. And uh, so some of the fallout, tax fallout from COVID-19, a tax expert over at the Advisor's Edge. One of the things they're looking at in Canada now, and it's been endorsed by the Globe and Mail, is a capital gains tax on real estate, even when it's your primary residence. So picture this. You work, you work 40 hours a week or more. Let's say you make, I don't know, 60, 70, 80 grand a year. You pay 30,000 of that in taxes, right? So you get 50 grand. You take your 50 grand to buy an inflated, overpriced house. And you have to sign up for a 30-year mortgage just to pay off this damn house, right? So you're buying a house for, call it $1 million. And then when all the interest is factored in, it'll probably be closer to 2 million. So after you're taxed, you're paying for this. There's a transfer tax when you buy the house. every year that you own it, for all those 30 years, you're getting a property tax. And then you go to sell it, the amount that it increases, you're going to get taxed on as well. So, I mean, this is really just ridiculous. I don't know if the end goal of this is to completely push people out of home ownership, to push private citizens out of owning their own homes. I mean, one thing they should definitely do, I don't know if this has been tabled or not, but if there's a capital gains tax on owning a home, then interest should be tax deductible, right? Absolutely, it should. So, I mean, that's one tax. There's going to be a lot, guys. There's going to be a lot. There's going to be a lot of taxes. You can't just run up these kind of bills and not expect to pay for it at some point, right? Now, another thing. One thing I have noticed over the course of the last year is fewer and fewer people are buying into this whole pandemic, right? In the beginning, I think just about everybody was on board. Very quickly, people started dropping off. But even as recently as 6 months ago, you know, people were still adamant about flattening curves and keeping people safe, stay safe, and banging in pots and pans. Actually, that ended quite a while ago. Yeah. And if you're not wearing a mask, you're going to kill grandma. You're going to kill grandpa. How could you be so selfish? Yeah, those are the people that just want to go out in public. Those are the real bastards in all this, right? But unbeknownst to many of us, a lot of people are actually standing up to this. And there's been quite a few anti-mask rallies. And I thought I'd look for them. So anti-mask rally Vancouver, I searched this on Google. Well, here's something from February 20th. Here's something from February 23rd. Here's something from the 20th again. So nothing recent. January 1st. New York. I searched Vancouver, but nothing. Well, that's kind of odd, isn't it? Let's go more to a direct source. Let's go right to CTV News. Well, what are the news items on CTV News for today? Skier snowboarder remain missing. Police investigate shooting. Police identify victim of Abbotsford homicide. Mighty Ducks reboot stars BC actor born 15 years after the first movie. Oh, that's big news. A missing 81-year-old man with dementia is found safe. Man facing charges for assault. Man, I'm surprised we haven't seen anything on racism yet. Daily changes in COVID-19 protocols led to symptoms of PTSD for nurses, say researchers. Well, I believe that. Hard-hit Vancouver Island's First Nations ends COVID-19 shelter-in-place order. The Spotted Owl breeding facility welcomes disabled California relative. Okay, file that under the what the fuck category. Survey suggests 1 in 2 people of color have experienced racism in Canada, online racism. People of color. Well, I'm kind of a golden color myself, so I guess I'm a person of color, right? I'm a beautiful, beautiful hue of gold. I knew there would be a racism story. There's always something, and you know what? It's always Whitey. Whitey's always the bad guy. But anyways, not to get off topic here, we can see that, yeah, nothing about any kind of anti-mask rally. Well, I guess there's nothing happening, right? Wrong. If that's what you thought, you are wrong. So this happened just yesterday. This is in Vancouver. Giant anti-mask protest. Quite a few people, right? Stopping traffic in downtown Vancouver. That's a lot of people. So, yeah, that's quite something, right? I mean, we see our news again, they're manipulating things, aren't they? They're burying news stories, right? That's a big story. It's bigger than a fucking spotted owl welcoming a disabled relative from California. Give me a fucking break, right? This is a major protest going right through Vancouver and buried. Doesn't show up on Google. So Google's not your friend, okay? Google's lying to you. Doesn't show up on CTV. I bet if I went to global, it won't show up there, and it probably won't be on CBC either. Maybe one of them. Definitely buried though, right? And that's a major thing. So I would keep that in mind. What you're seeing online, if you're a person that checks into official news sources, if you watch CNN, CTV, global news, or even if you just search on Google, you're not getting anything close to the real story, right? People are pissed off. People are fed up. People don't want to be quarantined for 2 goddamn weeks for taking a vacation, right? I mean, we've been in this a year. We've put up with this a year, right? For a virus that has a 0.5% death rate. Enough is enough, right? So keep that in mind. I think now here I will tell you what I expect in the months and weeks ahead. How long are we on this video now? I guess Ivan doesn't know. Ivan, how long have we been going? Ivan doesn't know. So I will wrap this up briefly, okay? I think anybody that thinks that they're getting back to normal, and I've seen a lot of people posting this, that, well, things should be back to normal. When things are back to normal, hey man, they're not coming back to normal, okay? That's not going to happen. Some things will. Look at it this way. It's like a pressure cooker, right? And the pressure builds up, builds up, builds up. They're going to let out a little bit of steam, right? To keep it going. You know, the masks, I don't know if that'll survive the end of the year. I think there's going to be certain people that will want to wear them no matter what. I think that's going to fade. I think you're going to see that starting at least in public and on streets and stuff like that by the summer for sure. Airlines will probably still continue to do it. This whole quarantining bullshit, you know, that's another thing that's going to be very tough to enforce. But they're going to try, and they're going to be pushing this vaccine passport if you want to travel. And sure enough, you'll have people say, well, if you go to Africa, you have to prove that you've had your shots. Okay, man, sure. Nowhere else in the world do you have to prove that you've had your shots, okay? And I know I've traveled a lot, so don't give me some bullshit exemption. Oh, well, one time I went to Nepal and I had to have my tetanus shot. I don't give a shit, okay? You don't need it, right? And are things going to go back to normal? I don't think it'll ever be 2019 again. And for what that's worth, maybe some of that's for the better, right? But I really think we should put a stop to government overreach and corporate overreach on our individual freedoms. We got to remember, governments are here simply to serve the people. They're there, they're put in place, they're hired or they're elected to facilitate the running of the country for us. We're not their servants. They don't lord over us, whatever they may think, whatever graft they're involved in, whatever corruption they got their hands in. They are not our overlords, okay? They are put in a place to conduct the affairs of the country as we see fit, right? Once they overstep those bounds and once they get out of line, you can't put up with it, man. You got to take a hard stand. So I would recommend doing that when it comes to masks or any of these other mandates. Like, enough is enough, okay? We've all had enough of this bullshit. Let's start putting a stop to it. So on that note, which I'm sure will piss some people off, but hey, I don't care. I will end the show. But if you're interested, I will have an update probably in a week or so with good old Terry out in Chilliwack. Remember that guy who was thrown in that Mexican jail with Terry? Well, we're going to go out and catch up with him and see how he's doing. He's been in lockdown, but he actually likes it. So anyways, that's it for now. Stay safe.